Peace, peace, peace. I haven't recorded anything for God knows how long. I simply haven't had the time. But to be honest, the way the Quran gets abused these days, and the way the message of the Quran gets entirely overridden, and the way non-Arabic speakers get manipulated and diverted from the Quran has just become too much for me to bear. Because at the end of the day, what made me accept this message called Islam is the message found in the Quran. What made me fall in love with the message of Islam is the message found in the Quran. Little did I know that many of the words in the Quran have been mistranslated in order to divert the narrative of the Quran to something that it's not. And I hate to say it, but it's been successful, because most people today only use the Quran for one thing and one thing alone, and that is just to recite it during their rituals. So in essence, the Quran has been reduced to a mantra book or a book of hymns, and I will endeavor to prove that with this channel. Now, what I find really sad is that I found that when you just listen to the crowd of people who associate themselves with Islam, you will reach a stage, a position where reading the Quran becomes impossible. It literally becomes impossible, because you will have so many ideas that you are convinced is Islam, and then when you read the Quran, your ideas just will not gel. They just won't fit. Furthermore, when certain words come up in the Quran, of which you've been given a certain translation for, then you will find that those translations just don't fit the context where these words are found in the Quran. So you'll translate the word something, and then you read the word in the context it's in, and it never fits, never works. And it's so many, like the amount is just amazing. It's literally a foreign book, the Quran, when you approach it from a Sunni or Shia background. It becomes an entirely foreign book, because all of your ideas from Sunni Shia background is nowhere to be found in the Quran. And I know that people obviously have a short attention span, so I'll try and keep my videos between 10 and 15 minutes, addressing one topic at a time. But I need it to be made known, I need it to be clear for everyone listening. This is not an attack on Sunniism, nor is it an attack on Shiism. In fact, I don't even plan to talk about Sunniism and Shiism. It's just a defense of the narrative of the Quran. And it's also a defense of non-Arabic speakers, because at the moment we have Arabic speakers or Arabs, when they read the Quran, they will be able to understand, if they really care, that is, if they put in the effort, they can understand what these words are in the Quran. So the people that have really been diverted are the non-Arabic speakers, or the non-Arabs, if you will. We have been completely diverted, like completely. So I'll give you guys an example. Ruku'. So there are these two words, Ruku' and Sujud, commonly translated as bow and prostrate, which are basically physical movements that people make during their ritual prayer, as they call it. However, when you find the word ruku' in the Quran and you have that idea, it never fits. It never fits. So for instance, if you go to chapter 555, you will find this word ruku'. So it says, إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. Only your ally is God and His Messenger and those who believed, and those who observe the salah and give the zakah, وهم راكعون, and they are raki'un. Now pay attention that wahum raki'un is simply a description of the people spoken about. This description cannot for a moment be those who bow down in quote-unquote ritual prayer, because that doesn't describe anything. It doesn't describe anything at all. In fact, considering what this verse is talking about, your ally is only God and His Messenger and those who believed and those who observe salah and give zakah, wahum raki'un. So they do this whilst they are raki'un. So they do this whilst they physically bow down. That's silly. That's silly. That's not describing anything. And in fact, because of the fact that you have وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, which from a Sunni background or a Shia background, you have to take that as though it's a separate action. So you have وَيَقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ, which is an action. You have وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, which is a separate action. وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ, which they would like it to be. Well, it would be a separate action if we go by the Sunni Shia logic. However, I think it's quite obvious that the and here is a conjunctive and that it's not identifying separate things. But I digress. The point here is wahum raki'un. Even if you're a Sunni or a Shia, in this particular verse, you couldn't argue that it's referring to, that it's describing people who physically bow down. So with that said, the only thing that it could possibly be here is that it's describing these people that it just mentioned as humble whilst they are humble. So they observe salah and they give zakah while in humility, whilst they are humble. That's the only thing that this particular verse or context could support. So if the description is raki'un, then 9:112 says ar-raki'un. So ar-raki'un here could surely only be bear with me. Yeah, so ar-raki'un here could surely only be that only puts the behind it. So it's the humble. Whilst they are humble was their description. Now those people will collectively be referred to as the humble, or in Arabic, ar-raki'un. Now those referred to as ar-raki'un, let's look at 9:112. Let's look at it in context and see if the Sunni or Shia understanding could possibly fit. So we have at-ta'ibuna, the repenters, al-abiduna, the worshippers, al-hamiduna, the praisers, as-sa'ihuna, those who hold themselves back, or meditators, ar-raki'un, we leave it untranslated, as-sajidun, deal with that in another video. الأمرون بالمعروف والناهون عن المنكر والحافظون لحدود الله وبشر المؤمنين. So you have the repenters, the servants or the worshippers, the praisers, those who hold themselves back, and then you have ar-raki'un and as-sajidun. Now we are led to believe that ar-raki'un here or as-sajidun and as-sajidun is the bowers and the prostrators. Now considering what we just read before, it doesn't really fit, does it? I mean, repenting, okay. Worshipping, okay. Praising, all right. There's a relation there. Look, repent, worship, praise. There's a relation there. Holding yourself back. There's a relation there. Physically putting your head down on the, bowing down or prostrating, putting your head down on the ground. What's the relation? There is no relation, and it gets worse. The advocators of kindness. How did we go? All right, advocators of kindness and physically bowing down. What's the relation? There is no relation. Advocators of kindness, forbidders of vice. Again, any relation with bowers? Physically bowing down? Nope. The observers of the limits of God. Any connection to physically bowing down? Nope. Or prostrating? Nope. And give good news to the believers. So there's only two things standing out here, and that is ar-raki'un and as-sajidun, the way they are translated, which just simply isn't possible. Well, what does fit with the rest of what we have here is the humble and the submissive. See? They're humble and they submit. Humble with God's instructions, and they submit to God's instructions. That will fit with the rest. That will fit with commanders of righteousness and forbidders of evil. That will fit with praisers and worshippers and repenters. What will not fit for a moment is the so-called bowers and prostrators. That won't fit for a moment. And especially considering the fact that we have وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ, while they are humble, ar-raki'un is simply putting the behind it, which just define those group of people as the humble. So, considering that we now have that, so we've ticked off 912 and we've ticked off 555. There really isn't much left. So, who are the people that can be referred to as raki'un? The people who can be referred to as raki'un obviously have to be people who did warka'u. They would actually have to perform this action in order to be referred to or described by said action. So if you go to chapter 243, you will see people who are told أقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين. We'll get to the مع الراكعين in a bit. واركعوا. So you have to do this action so that you can be referred to as, the people who are وهم راكعون, or the people defined as ar-raki'un. So, I mean, pretty straightforward, isn't it? I mean, how are you going to be referred to as raki'un unless you actually do what it takes? So doing what it takes is to do the arka'u in the first place. So we can remove 3 verses with just that one word, warka'u, because it's 3 verses that has the same. So 243 has warka'u, and 277 has irka'u, same word. And 7748 has also irka'u. So those are 3 occurrences, same word, same meaning. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for it. In Lane's lexicon, you will find one of the meanings of the word irka'u, or ruku', however they would like to put it, is to be humble or debase yourself, whether in worship or otherwise. So we're simply what we're doing is simply letting the context dictate what the words can mean, and none of the context in the Quran support the idea that it could potentially have anything to do with physically bowing down. There's not, the context simply does not assist that. You have to insult your own intelligence to conclude that. So irka'u can go. So what's left? What's left is raki'un. Raki'un are those who do the irka'u. You see, plural people all doing the irka'u. They are referred to as raki'in. Those who raki'in, those who humble themselves. So 243 is essentially saying irka'u ma'ar raki'in. Humble yourself with those who are humble. Pretty straightforward. And then you have, same with 343, it's just put in the feminine sense now. Instead of irka'u, it's warka'i, because Mary is being spoken to. Ya Maryama, uqnuti li rabbika wasjid warka'i ma'ar raki'in. So warka'i here is just put in a feminine sense. So it's the same word as irka'u. So here, ma'ar raki'in, same thing that we just discussed. Humble yourself with those who are humble. And notice in this particular verse, there is no salah or anything of that mentioned here, which just goes to show that this word has no relation with salah according to the Quran. There's no dependency, shall I say, with salah according to the Quran. And then we haven't got much left. And then we have, so we've done, yeah, okay, we might as well go to Ruku is Sujud, which is chapter 2, 125, and chapter 22, 26. I'll find that out in a second. Where it tells us, إن ظهر بيتي للطائفين والعاكفين والركع السجود. والركع السجود. The translation make it out as though it says والركوع والسجود, thereby making it two separate actions. However, the Arabic does not have an and, so it is not والركوع والسجود. It cannot be bow and prostrate, because bow and prostrate are two separate actions and you would need an and to make them distinct. However, you don't have the and here, which just ruins the party for my Sunni and Shia brethren, I'm afraid. Ruku is Sujud can only be a description of the Sujud. Namely, it says, Andahara Baiti, that you purify my bait. I'll get into bait in another video. That you purify my bait. Li. Li is for. For who? Ta'ifina wal akifina. For those groups of people. Well, ta'ifina wal akifina. And they are opposite. So in a nutshell, it's basically groups of people who live there and the groups who are visiting. Lit-ta'ifina are on the outskirts, and wal-akifina are the residents. Wal-ruku' is-sujud is simply a description of said people, because we don't want all people, all kinds of people that live here and all kinds of people that live on the outskirts of the particular town in discussion, but specific people with this description being وَالرُّكُعِ السُّجُودِ. وَالرُّكُعِ here being the description of the sujud being the action taken. So it's simply وَالرُّكُعِ السُّجُودِ, who humbly submit. Humbly submit. I'm not even going to go further than that, because you can give it a try. All other possibilities, nothing else will work. Literally nothing else will work. Everything else will be a description of a physical action, like, I don't know, bowing submissively. That'd be silly. Bowing submissively as opposed to what? As opposed to what? Like, in order for it to be a description, there has to be, you know, a differentiation, a distinction made somehow. So bowing submissively as opposed to, it don't work. I'm nearly reaching 20 minutes, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up. So it can only be humbly submit, because the alternative to that is to submit not wanting to not submit because you feel that, you know, that you feel threatened or whatever. You feel you have to for you submit under duress. There you go. That's the opposite. Ruku is sujood. So what's left? So I gave you guys 22, 26 and 2, 125. They both say Ruku is sujood. It can only be humbly submit, a description of the submission. So you have 38, 24 and 48, 29, and that's about it. So 38, 24, actually this is important because there are people who basically still struggle to let go of a few things that they were raised with, and to the point where they'll ignore the verses of the Quran. Not only that, they'll edit the verses of the Quran. They will dumb themselves down. They will come up with all kinds of emotions, everything, all kinds of circus, just to avoid the facts. So let me make the facts clear for you. And let me get to the point where it's in discussion. I haven't really got much time. Which is simply, David thought that we tested him. فَاسْتَغْفِرَ رَبَّهُ وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا وَأَنَابًا. فَاسْتَغْفِرَ رَبَّهُ وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا وَأَنَابًا. Now, there are people who use this particular verse to say, yes, there is a physical bowing, blah, 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 but they're not paying attention. If you pay attention here, it says, فَاسْتَغْفَرَ رَبَّهُ. He asked forgiveness of his Lord. وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا. So which came first? Asking forgiveness of his Lord came first, and then came وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا. What is not possible is that you ask for forgiveness and then you bow down. That's not how it works. That's simply not possible. You bow down, then you ask for forgiveness. But the other way around is not possible. It's literally not possible. Give it a try. Ask for forgiveness and then bow down. See how silly you look. That's not how it works. And then to make it worse, look at what follows after that. وَأَنَابًا, which is he turned to God. So you ask for forgiveness, then you bow down, and then you turn to God. What does turning to God look like after you bow down? Is it like you bow down, you turn to your right? What do you mean? It does not work. It's not possible. Stop insulting yourselves. What would have worked is bow down and ask for forgiveness, then I would have put my hands up. But ask for forgiveness, then bow down, and then turn to God, it's not possible. It's literally not possible. Give it a go. I ask for forgiveness, then I go down on my knees, then I turn to God. What does turning to God look like once I'm on my knees? Why do people do this? I'll never understand. Anyways, the only thing possible considering that is he asked for forgiveness and he fell in humility. You can use the word fall for humility because it's the opposite of pride. And pride, you think you are, you think you're elevated. You see, it's the opposite of arrogance. Arrogance has this notion of elevation. Humility has a notion of coming back down to earth. So fell in humility and he turned to God. Well, in fact, that's what you would expect someone to do once they have repented. When they repent, they humble themselves. They don't just repent for the simple one action they did. They humble themselves for the future, From here on out, they humble themselves because they have just understood something, hence why they are repenting. So you repent, you humble yourself, and when you humble yourself, what do? You turn to God. You program yourself to be in tune with God. It's just what follows from forgiveness. You see, you ask for forgiveness, you humble yourself, and you turn to God to make yourself in tune with God. Physically bowing down is impossible in this verse. this really isn't this really isn't just a matter of just deen alone. You know, you're playing with your deen, but it's also a matter of, did you not learn to read? I don't understand. Reading does not allow you to come to these conclusions. So I've got two choices. Either I act illiterate at my old age, my grown ass age, I act all illiterate like I can't read. Or I accept the facts. There's nothing in between. So it's not possible. Last but not least, 48:29, where it basically describes the people around the Prophet. So it says, Muhammad, a messenger of God, and those with him are stern against the deniers and merciful among themselves. You see them ruk'an sujadan. Again, it's not two separate actions. There is no and in between. Ruk'an sujadan. Again, I think we discussed this earlier, really. Ruk'an sujadan is simply a description of the sujood that they are doing. So they're humbly submitting. So the people around the messenger are humbly submitting. He is the messenger, he is the prophet, he gives them instructions, and they simply humbly submit. I mean, there is nothing difficult to understand here. And yarki'un, just so that people don't say you forgot that one bit. 77:48, which I already addressed the irka'u part. So it simply says, and when it was said to them, irka'u, when it was said to them to do this action, irka'u, so they can then be referred to as raki'un, and then be defined as ar-raki'un, they have to do the irka'u, remember? Okay, so when it was said to them, irka'u, they did not do irka'u. Not doing irka'u equals yarki'un. So when it was said to them, irka'u, la yarki'un. They did not ruku', which means la yarki'un. You see, very simple. So tonight, I'm just going to leave it with the ruku'. Bloody hell, that took damn near half an hour. I apologize. But, you know, what can I say? At least I think I broke down every verse. I didn't leave any stone unturned. There is not a single verse, a single context that entertains the notion of ruku' having anything to do with a physical action of any kind. I'm just going to leave it with this, because I know people tend to get emotional. This is not an attack against the Quran. This is a defense of the Quran, and a defense of the Quran being a universal book. Therefore, people who claim to speak Arabic should simply not feel they simply should not feel at liberty to tell people whatever the hell they want, to the point where people reach a stage where they can't read the Quran. They literally cannot read the Quran because these translations are just that horrible. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Till next time. Peace.